A lot of Canadians, a lot of businesses apparently wondering, well, why doesn't the government just order them back to work? Well, like many things, it's not that simple. We are joined by Rafael Gomez, Professor and Director of the Centre of Industrial Relations and Human Relations at the University of Toronto. Thank you very much indeed for coming on.
Thanks, Andy, for having me.
Really appreciate it. So can we start off with this news that the National Industrial Relations Board said the rails are not an essential service.
That's right.
And I think that mystified some people. Can you explain?
Right. Well, there's two things that mystifies people, and one in particular from experts in the field is that's not such a crazy ruling because both parties, the union and the employer, agreed that they weren't essential. And those were the submissions they made to the Canadian Industrial Relations Board. Now, why? If you look at the definition of what is an essential service, it's a very high bar. It has to be something that affects the well-being, the health of citizens, like imminently. So you can think of federally regulated areas. What would be one? RCMP. They have to be on the ready, stamping out terrorist plots and other criminal activity. But everything else drops below. Something that's severely economically impactful doesn't rise to that bar of an essential kind of service. It's kind of like the Emergencies Act. If you remember, people were debating what is the trigger. It's really life, your life and well-being is at risk, not an economic matter. That said, everyone knew that. So why did the government waste the Canadian Industrial Relations Board time to make the ruling? That's an open question.
Because the former Labour Minister, Seamus O'Regan, you feel wasted time and energy looking for a ruling.
Absolutely. What was the point if the parties themselves, both, are making the same submission to the Industrial Relations Board? What would the board do in that case? Overrule the very parties that they're supposed to manage the relationship? Made no sense. So yes, time lost. This happened. This was triggered in early part of the year. You wasted 3 months for a ruling, and now we're in the summer, end of summer, which is particularly impactful for a lot of the freight that gets shipped out, which is agricultural goods that can go bad and waste. So this is not good timing.
And if it had been ruled an essential service, would that have freed the federal government to prevent a strike?
Not really. It goes beyond that. It's not just a service. You have to actually go drill in and say which jobs are essential and which aren't. It's much more complicated. So in other words, the ruling did not sort of say, okay, the whole broad brush of every employee at CN is now deemed essential. It would actually get to the sort of nitty-gritty of determining who's an essential worker, how long can you actually, because sometimes if something's essential, an essential worker can even be made to work to provide the service that is deemed essential. Anyway, it was a minefield. It wasn't going to go anywhere, and I think it was that wasted time when the parties could have been directed and signaled, look, we're not getting involved, period. The federal government wants you to come up with a solution, end of story. But this sort of middle of the road, trying to have it one way or the other, I think sends mixed signals to parties, and then they're expecting, well, someone's going to walk in here and solve the problem for us.
If, in theory, the government recalled Parliament, they could order the railroads to reopen and the workers back.
But of course, theory and practice, this is a Liberal minority government, and we know the NDP has said that's a red line that will not be crossed. We don't want back to work orders. And let's be frank, if the essential service, which was clear to everyone, now is very crystal clear, this is not an essential service, you're ordering back workers and essentially abrogating the right to strike, which in a very kind of important 2015 Supreme Court ruling kind of established that for non-essential workers. If there's a strike, a provision in a particular collective agreement, can't just sort of willy-nilly take it away. I think what's open still, potentially even with the NDP coalition, is there's a section already in the Labor Code called Section 107, that if the parties aren't negotiating, aren't coming to a ruling, because this is a federal jurisdiction, it impacts all Canadians, governments can intervene and send them to arbitration. Just because the bargaining isn't going well, it's not proving fruitful.
Sorry, what's the circumstance they can do that?
The government, the way it's written, it's up to the government minister at the time to decide that the two parties are just not negotiating, perhaps in good faith. It's not leading to a resolution, but the lockout has just happened. How long is too long before you say, now we're going to trigger Section 107? And does the NDP literally mean, convening Parliament and ordering back to work? Or do they also include this Section 107 in their sort of no-go area? It's not clear, right? Jagmeet was the leader of the opposition was sort of saying, don't order them back to work, don't recall Parliament, because that's a trigger for a confidence vote. But this is no vote. This is embedded in the legislation.
So maybe that
could be the way out.
Would let them do that.
Yeah, because this wasn't a red line. There won't be a confidence vote in Parliament for this. But you do have to play out negotiations. a day into a lockout, is that too soon to trigger 107? You could argue, look, they've been negotiating for several months now, many months, since the collective agreement ended, and there still isn't a resolution. The problem with this is that if you allow a lockout or strike to occur and then you intervene after, you get the worst of both worlds, because you've got the cost of the strike and you've already ordered people back anyway. So it's either decide now that these people will come to a resolution themselves and hopefully have a good solution, or decide early on that this is not permissible, the network is too important. It might not be deemed essential by the CIRB, but we have important aspects of this railway network that we can't allow to sort of fall by the wayside. All the supply chain disruptions could be very impactful.
We are going to hear from a researcher later on the show who argues that the government is partly at fault here for dragging its feet on clarifying railway safety and fatigue rules. Is there anything in that?
Yeah, so this was a decision. So here you have a regulated sector. We all know why it's an important, crucial sector. But you have a very mature company and a mature union negotiating things. But the government steps in and puts in statutory provisions. What a statute does, it says, now we impose this directive. And what they did is they did impose some mandatory kind of breaks into the language of both companies. These companies are sprawling. They're very big, and they have small lines that they've acquired over time that might have different kind of norms and precedents, and now they have to abide by this one rule. It doesn't work. It's like the one size does not fit all. I think when you have a mature industry that has mature collective bargaining, it's best that those parties decide it. I think what the companies in this case, and even probably the unions too, find this kind of an ill-fitting intervention because it doesn't fit every worker they represent, and certainly the employer wants as much flexibility. But of course you can get that with collective bargaining because you can negotiate that, and you could have a different kind of rule perhaps for a small outlining railway that they've purchased that's in the northern part of, say, the country, and one for a more busy, say, track that's in the sort of southern, more dense part of the country. So that is a trigger, and I would say, yeah, there's probably some truth to that's intervention that has not been helpful to the collective bargaining process.
I can't quite follow what you're saying. The intervention, the government...
Yeah, the statutory rule to say now we're going to impose these mandatory breaks on every worker. So, the government can write a law that says this is the employment standard for everyone.
That's not the way to go.
And not when you have a mature, as I said, company and union that can negotiate these provisions and could put carve-outs and make amendments for the right workers. If the workers were weak and they didn't have a good union that was defending their interests, then you could say maybe government has to step in and put in these rules. But this is not the case. The Teamsters Rail Union is a very strong, mature union, which has the backing of its members. It would have been best for those parties to figure out that themselves.
The New York Times, I was interested in reading their coverage today. They mentioned Hunter Harrison, whose roles in the industry included former boss of CN Rail. And he has been credited with bringing down costs radically. And of course, that tends to put pressure on employees. Yeah. Is there a case to be made that under Hunter, he's not the only one, of course, who did that, but he was part of a trend that has seen more pressure put on workers, more risk of fatigue?
I think so. I think what there is truth to that. Workers, though, have two channels. They can push back through their union and argue for the right sort of countermeasures, the right safety protocols. There's a lot of that cost, though, was driven by technology. So a lot of new technology has come in to make railways safer with less human sort of oversight or activity. Now, there's always risk for that. You always need a human being as the final kind of arbitrator, I think, in rail. We want that. But I think there is a cost pressure, there's a time pressure, and I think the unions are right to say, okay, if you want to bring in this more flexibility, then pay us for it. It's not clear that CP and CN are ready to do that, which is why the union was sort of pushing back. But that's what bargaining is about. That's what getting a deal is about.
Thanks very much.